Picture this. May 1st, 1960. High above the Soviet Union, at an altitude of 70,500 feet, that's over 13 miles up alone, American pilot is flying a top-secret mission. His name is Francis Gary Powers, and he's piloting the U-2 spy plane, a marvel of engineering designed to fly so high it was thought to be untouchable. The view from up there was breathtaking, the curvature of the Earth clearly visible against the blackness of space. But this was no sightseeing trip. Powers was deep in enemy territory, photographing Soviet military installations. The CIA had assured him he was safe. At that altitude, no Soviet missile could reach him. They were wrong. Suddenly, a bright orange flash erupts nearby, followed by a violent explosion that rocks the fragile aircraft. The sky, once serene, turns into a chaotic nightmare of light and sound. The U-2, codenamed Dragon Lady, is hit. Its long, delicate wings are torn apart, and the plane starts to spin violently out of control, plummeting towards the ground. Powers is thrown around the cockpit like a ragdoll by the intense G. His mission, his plane, his life, everything is literally falling apart. How could anyone possibly survive a fall from the edge of space? This is the incredible story of the pilot who did, and whose survival baffled the KGB and sent shockwaves around the world. To understand the sheer impossibility of this event, we have to talk about the U-2 spy plane. In the midst of the Cold War, the United States desperately needed to know what the Soviet Union was up to, especially concerning their nuclear capabilities. But traditional spy methods were risky and often ineffective. They needed eyes in the sky, and the U-2 was the answer. Developed in secret by Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works division, the U-2 was essentially a jet-powered glider. It had massive, long wings and a lightweight frame, allowing it to soar at altitudes far beyond any other aircraft of its time. Flying, it was notoriously difficult. Pilots called it one of the hardest planes to fly and land. It was designed to fly above 70,000 feet, an altitude where the air is so thin that pilots had to wear what were essentially spacesuits. The man in the cockpit, Francis Gary Powers, was not just any pilot. He was an elite, hand-picked airman who had joined a clandestine CIA program. These pilots were the best of the best, trained to handle extreme conditions and the intense pressure of flying solo for hours over hostile territory. For 4 years, Powers and other U-2 pilots had been crisscrossing the Soviet Union, providing invaluable intelligence to the US government. Each mission was a high-stakes gamble, but the belief was that their altitude was their ultimate protection. The Soviets could track them on radar. They could send up fighter jets that would stall out miles below, but they couldn't touch them. Or so the CIA thought. What Powers did I know was that the Soviets had been working feverishly on a new surface-to-air missile system, the S-75 Dvina, known to NATO as the SA-2 guideline. And on that fateful May Day, they were ready. As Powers flew over the city of Sverdlovsk, the Soviets launched a barrage of 14 missiles. Inside the cockpit, chaos reigned. The plane was in an inverted, flat spin. Powers struggled against the G-force, trying to reach the self-destruct switches to destroy the plane and its sensitive camera equipment, just as he'd been trained to do. But the force was too strong. He couldn't get back into his seat. The canopy was shattered, and the wind was howling. He knew he had to get out. Bailing out at that altitude was a death sentence in itself. The thin air and extreme cold would be instantly fatal. But he had no choice. As the plane spiraled downwards, he managed to jettison the canopy and was immediately sucked out of the cockpit. His survival from this point on is nothing short of a miracle. He was supposed to be connected to an oxygen supply in his seat, but he had been ripped away from it. He instinctively knew not to pull his parachute's ripcord immediately. Opening it at such a high altitude would lead to a slow, freezing descent and a lack of oxygen. He had to freefall to a lower, breathable altitude. Tumbling through the sky, he fought to stay conscious. He finally managed to open his chute at around 15,000 feet. As he drifted down, he watched the wreckage of his U-2 fall to Earth. He landed in a field, where he was quickly surrounded by bewildered local farmers. The American spy had literally fallen from the sky. When the news broke, it caused a global political firestorm. Initially, the US government tried to cover it up, issuing a press release claiming a NASA weather research plane had gone missing over Turkey. They were confident Powers was either dead or had destroyed the plane, leaving no evidence. They had no idea he'd been captured alive, and that the Soviets had recovered large parts of the plane, including the camera and its film. Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev saw his chance. He waited for the Americans to deepen their lie, then dramatically revealed the truth to the world. They had the pilot, they had the plane, and they had the proof of American espionage. It was a massive embarrassment for President Eisenhower in the US, shattering an upcoming peace summit in Paris. For Francis Gary Powers, the ordeal was far from over. He was taken to Moscow and handed over to the KGB. They were utterly baffled. Their experts believed survival from that altitude was impossible. How did he endure the explosion, the G-forces, the extreme cold, and the lack of oxygen? They interrogated him for months at the infamous Lubyanka prison. They wanted to know everything: the secrets of the U-2, the CIA's methods, and most of all, how he survived. Powers, following his training, revealed only non-critical information. He confirmed his name, his mission, but gave away no technical secrets or names of other pilots. The KGB were frustrated. They expected a super spy, a James Bond figure, but found a professional pilot who was just following orders. Powers was eventually put on a public show trial, accused of espionage. The trial was a major propaganda event for the Soviet Union. He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison and labor camps. His life as a free man seemed over. He spent his days in Vladimir's central prison, a stark and lonely existence, a world away from the skies he once flew. But back in the United States, negotiations were underway. After nearly 2 years of imprisonment, in February 1962, a deal was struck. On the Glienicke Bridge in Berlin, the so-called Bridge of Spies, Francis Gary Powers was exchanged for a convicted KGB spy, Rudolf Abel. It was the first spy swap of the Cold War. But Powers' return home was not the hero's welcome he might have expected. He was met with suspicion and criticism. Why didn't he use the suicide pin the CIA had provided? Why didn't he destroy the plane? He faced tough debriefings from the CIA and a Senate committee. Many in the public and media unfairly branded him a coward or even a traitor. He had to fight to clear his name, explaining that the violent G-forces had made it impossible to trigger the self-destruct sequence, and that the suicide pin was optional, not a requirement. Eventually, both the CIA and the Senate committee concluded that he had acted honorably and followed his orders under extreme duress. Despite being officially exonerated, the cloud of suspicion lingered for years. He struggled to find work as a pilot, the shadow of the U-2 incident following him everywhere. He eventually found a job as a helicopter pilot for a TV news station in Los Angeles. Tragically, in 1977, while covering a wildfire, his helicopter ran out of fuel and crashed. Francis Gary Powers, the man who survived a fall from the edge of space, died in a routine flight at the age of 47. It was a somber end for a man who had lived such an extraordinary life. Years later, his story has been reimagined. He's now widely seen as a true American hero, a patriot who served his country in one of the most dangerous roles of the Cold War. In 2000, on the 40th anniversary of his family was posthumously awarded the Prisoner of War Medal, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the National Defense Service Medal. In 2012, he was posthumously awarded the Silver Star, the nation's third highest military decoration for valor. Francis Gary Powers' incredible survival was a testament to his skill, his training, and a fair bit of luck. His story is a gripping chapter of the Cold War, a reminder of the secret battles fought miles above our heads, and of the quiet heroes who flew them. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible tales from history. We'll see you in the next video.